Do I do both or just one? I'm a partner in the venture capital and technology group at McCarter & English. We're a big law firm, but we're an East Coast-based VC and tech practice. We did over 200 venture capital deals last year, helping startups from really early stage, pre-formation, all the way up through exit. And that includes raising money from outside investors, but most importantly, helping them make money, right? And helping them generate that revenue in order to achieve those venture rounds, that next venture round, and their ultimate monetization events. So I'm lucky enough to be up here today with Michael and Ankur, both of whom have successfully gone through that journey, and would love to have a chat about it. So why don't we just do some introductions and kick it off. So Michael, why don't we start with you? Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Perfect. Well, good to see everyone. This is an amazing room. We have a dog. That's cool. And certainly, it's kind of fun being on a revenue panel. A lot of the work I do, we are a for-profit business, but you'll hear in a little bit, it definitely more often than not, people think we're a nonprofit because we're very impact-focused. So I usually speak on many different types of panels, not revenue-focused, so this will be fun for me talking through our journey. But we're a community-based platform. We do events. We do original content. And it's all around change makers across the U.S. Making an impact in their communities.
What's up, everyone? My name is Ankur Nagpal. I'm the founder of a company called Techable. At Techable, our idea is really simple. We believe everyone here has unique and valuable knowledge and expertise, and we want to help people make a living from their expertise. So today, our product helps people create and launch beautiful online courses. We have 20,000 creators teaching about 20 million people on our platform. I've been doing this for about 5 years now.
Awesome. Could you share with us a little bit about where you guys are now and how you started as far as customer acquisition and revenue growth? What was it like in the beginning, and what have you guys achieved to date?
Cool. So I did something that I recommend wherever possible for people, and that is build a product for yourself. So customer number one right here. So built the first version of what became Techable. Since a friend of mine and I had online courses, we didn't like the platform available at the time. We were on Udemy. So we built it for ourselves, and it worked. And as soon as it started working for us, I then started finding other people who looked like us, which at the time was a bunch of Udemy instructors. So it was nothing fancy. It was just old school, like copy paste the same email to like every single person I could find on Udemy repeatedly until we probably went from customer 1 to 10.
Awesome. How about you, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of hit the nail on the head. I feel like the Breakout really was just me being bored at my last business. I was building a real estate media company, and I realized I was building a company and scaling, which was successful at the time, but really for a community I didn't care about. And so quite selfishly, I just wanted to learn from a lot of interesting people like these two gentlemen and people like yourself in the room. And it was not even a business idea. It was literally me just doing salon gatherings here in New York City. But we had scaled an event business before, so we knew something about that. And that's how we built things. And I think the cool thing, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but the business aspect started really taking a hold because we really leaned into change makers and impact. And especially, when you come to a Breakout event, we've had gender parity since the beginning. We have over 50% people of color. So it's this hyper-inclusive space that doesn't always happen. And that was something people really leaned into in a big way. And that's why we have strong customer growth.
Could you tell us a little bit about the first sale? What did that look like? How did you approach it? How did you design it? How did you identify the customer? And how did you ultimately close it? Michael, why don't you start?
Well, I mean, my first quote-unquote sale was a terrible business idea. I recommend to no one. The first thing we ever did was we rented a 737 from Southwest Airlines and put 100 founders on a plane to Miami. Don't do that. Certainly, though, was a great marketing tool for us, and it was a great first event. But it definitely put us in a little bit of a hole that was not good to the P&L statement.
So who was your target customer in that environment, and how did you identify that?
Totally. It was just individuals that were sick of going to the same conferences. They didn't want to hear, kind of some of the same things, and they wanted, Breakout was literally break out of your bubble, break out of your silo. There's so much we can learn from different industries and different individuals as we're scaling things, and at the speed that I think all of us are building different businesses and jumping around, you never know when you might need to meet someone that's a journalist or in fashion or in finance. And that was really what I think really compelled people. And you know how a lot of these events go. The first time you don't know about something, if it's a good list, you go. And we had a good list.
And so how did you decide how to price that, though, right? If you're pitching a new event series that people don't have necessarily experience with, it's not an established brand out there in the marketplace. How do you close those sales, and how do you price that to make sure that you get people to actually come?
Well, the pricing was wrong. So we started out at $3,200 for an all-inclusive weekend in Miami.
For a first-time event.
First-time event, and we did have a lot of people pay that. And the funny thing, which I learned, was a lot of entrepreneurs make a lot less money than I realized at the time, because everyone wanted to tell me that they could afford that, and then the second I asked them for their credit card, it was like, well, maybe I can do like $1,000, maybe. So yeah, we had to drastically change our business pricing afterwards. But the whole point originally was the people who were attending our events were successful business leaders. So, you know, for people in certain industries, that was a company write-off. It wasn't a big deal. They were meeting with, you know, high-end business leaders. But for those on the creative side, you know, on the nonprofit side, that was a number that wasn't going to work.
So did you find that you had to discount and maybe cut things from the program? I assume you had a budget going into this, asking for $3,200 a seat.
Sure did.
Did you need to mix that up during the process, and how did you navigate that challenge?
Yeah, we sure did. Everyone who was on the low end had to bunk up. So we started doing all sorts of things to mix it up. That was our only event that we were under on our P&L. We vastly changed. And before that, as I mentioned, I was overseeing 300 events that I grew from zero. We had a multi-million-dollar real estate retreat where people were paying, you know, $4,000 to $20,000. So I knew how to build these events. Our team knew very much, you know, where the costs were coming from. But I'd been just dealing with real estate people for years and years, and so this was a newer market for me that I just didn't understand, that we quickly got a kick in the teeth to understand. So like today, you know, we work with, we have pretty much a sliding scale when it comes to our tickets. So certainly people on like the nonprofit side or the art side, you know, we have, you know, discounted tickets. We have funders, you know, from different spaces who fund those individuals to make up the cost. So we've come up with a very creative funding mechanism.
That's great. That's great. So Ankur, tell us a little bit about your original pricing strategy and your sales efforts. I get that you had a great opportunity with a predicate business for targeting the same set of customers, but how did you go after them? Did you go after them on price, on functionality? What was your original sales pitch, and how did you come up with that idea?
Yep, like everyone, we got our pricing wrong too. We started by charging people 15% of their sales. We were competing with Udemy, we actually got very, very fortunate. Right when we got started, Udemy changed their pricing from 30% to 50%. And what that did is that pissed off an entire community of people. So as then, it was great timing for us. We were like, hey, you don't want to pay 50%. How about you pay 15%? And that's how we lured our first customer, who was one of Udemy's top sellers, Mark Lassoff, still with us. We lured him away by, one, being like, look, 15%. But more than that, I said, I'll do all the work for you. So he literally sent me this flash drive, this 30 gigabytes of video that I manually uploaded into our back end and did everything for him for basically a third of the price Udemy was offering. And we had that pricing model for probably the first 6 months. We soon realized it was not the right pricing model. We moved to a more traditional SaaS model. But at the time, for us, it was a case of whatever we can do to get Udemy's top sellers on our platform, we'll do it. If I have to, you know, go over there myself and like upload their videos, I'll do it. So I think that definitely stood us in good stead for what was to come.
So as an upstart, it's really put in that extra effort, hustle a little bit harder than the incumbent. It doesn't necessarily need that incremental revenue as much as you guys do, and to them to be able to show that additional value onto the team. But how does that scale? Right? How did you, once you started to get those first set of clients, you know, continue that level of customer satisfaction, you know, to the growth that you've achieved?
Yeah, absolutely. So stage one was all direct outreach. Like in my mind, when you first are selling a product, there's no shortcut to actually like getting on the phone, sending an email. I took a flight, do whatever possible to get your first 20, 50, 100 customers. Once that started working, we tried to think about how to systematize it. So then we built systems where if you launched a course on Udemy or Skillshare or whatever, we would find out who you were and like run automated outreach to you. That backfired a little bit too. One of the stories I keep telling people is we built this really smart bot that scraped all of Udemy, found every creator's Facebook ID, used a script to find their email address and email them to consider joining Fedora, which is what Teachable used to be called at the time. What the script did is it scraped Udemy. The first Udemy course was created by the Udemy founder, so it emailed the Udemy founder telling him to move his course over. So the script misfired a little.
Did he sign up for Fedora?
You actually wrote a very polite email saying, "I wish you the best of luck, but I'm not moving from Udemy at this time." So there were a few missteps along the way, but we tried to like systematically scale that. The next level of scale came when we started using events because one-on-one sales wouldn't work anymore. So what we did is we try and get anyone who was vaguely interested to start attending a weekly workshop, which was basically like a webinar, one-to-many sales. That helped us, kind of hit our second level of growth. Our third level of growth happened when we started using influencers and other creators, basically people that were business leaders, and used them to promote our platform. Those are kind of the three levels at which each level unlocked kind of a new phase of growth.
How do you incentivize those evangelists, if you will, to go ahead and
money? I mean, we pay.
Yeah, what does that look like?
So for instance, I'll give you a very specific example. So in March, we actually held an event. We do this twice a year. We held an event called Women Who Create. It was an online conference where we had about 30 amazing women that have started and launched businesses on Teachable, speak to about 50,000 people who signed up for the free event. And our pitch to everyone promoting this event is, one, we'll put you in front of our audience, but if you send anyone who ends up buying Teachable, we'll pay you 50% to the speakers, and 30% if you're an affiliate on a recurring basis. So yeah, it was all about like kind of creating this win-win structure where we could make these deals with influencers and have them promote this larger event.
So you're creating sort of a viral sales force out there that's self-motivated to go ahead and make sales. Yep. That's a really great revenue growth strategy. So we've heard about sort of the beginnings, right? How did you get that first sale, and how did you iterate in order to learn from that? Tell us about some mistakes that you've made even after that. Along the way, and how you learn from those to help continue to grow revenue. Because once you got that first sale, right, now you've got some money coming in the door. Great, let's just repeat this, right? I'm sure that's not always how it goes. So could you give us an example or talk a little bit about how maybe doing the same thing didn't work and how you had to change it up to make it stick?
Yeah, so I guess it's a little bit less of a mistake, but we just did kind of what is like the obvious thing you would expect someone to do, especially with a bootstrap business, which is we needed monthly recurring revenue. So obviously we turned to a membership model, and we started rolling out membership across the country, and we were creating basically like leadership chapter groups led by different leaders, and people loved them within our community, so they were more than happy to run them on their own. It was on their own. But what started to happen a little bit was, especially with like the really busy type of leader that we were doing, someone was always raising money or trying to do what they need to do. They could only make so many gatherings, and then it turned into this like mindset of like a gym membership. So we were charging about $500 a year, which for some people is not a lot, but for some people it got a little tight. And for them, they would start looking at it, they'd be a few months in, and then they would cancel and say, hey, I love you, I love everything you're doing, but this isn't fully working. And so we found ourselves spending so much time on these small events, but at the end of the day, what it was also creating, and we ourselves were going down kind of a longer pipeline of, okay, we're doing these events, and we care about them, but what do we actually care about? And what we cared about, as I alluded to, was actually the change makers in these cities who were doing really impactful work for their cities, not just being a connecting piece for leaders to make, raise more money. That's not what I wanted to be in it for, and that's basically what we were doing with our meetups. So it was actually what kept us afloat in the beginning, but we eventually decided to stop doing so many of the local gatherings that we're making some money, but we're expanding way more of our time and put more effort in doing some of these larger gatherings, expanding into content, and just all these other things that we're doing today. And so we really leaned into what our consumer really actually wanted, and at the end of the day, that's led for us to have larger scale corporations and philanthropy that have come in as much bigger partners, which are actually allowing us to build what we're doing.
So really, perhaps counterintuitive to pare back on some revenue strategies you were doing that were generating revenue, but to focus on the core value proposition.
Yeah, it was super scary. It was paying my bills. It wasn't like I was making a ton of money, but it was enough to live in New York City and kind of coast by. So yeah, it was a scary thing to do the one thing that was our consistent revenue, but it gave us that bandwidth to actually start approaching the amount of partners we needed to come in a much bigger path. And now we're actually going back to some smaller, more intimate events in a different way. But now we have the proper partnerships to do it in a way where we can build the team and have the bandwidth to do it appropriately.
Fantastic. So Ankur, how about for Teachable? What strategies did you employ after you sort of had your initial product market fit and you started to get sales? How did you say, okay, now this is working, what do we do next? How do we grow this business?
Yeah, so the one thing we did that I only realized later on was kind of unique is every month we set a monthly growth target. So initially the targets would be really high, it'd be like 30%, 35%, 40%. And then we'd run the math. We'd say, okay, we'll probably churn 7% of our customers. We want to grow 40%. Run the math and figure out how much revenue we need to add. So let's say we'd come up with, we need to find $25,000 in monthly recurring revenue. And then we try and account for it wherever possible. What that means is we try and break that target down to different members of the team. Maybe we're trying to get 2 enterprise plans, so that's $2,000. We have 4 workshops where we expect to get $5,000 each. And then what would normally happen is we'd have a missing number. Maybe like, we're going to miss our target unless we find another $8,000. And then that $8,000 formed our strategy. We'd have to like almost, how they say necessity is the mother of all invention? Like we would then have to take that number, work backwards, and try and either do a new deal, get a new partner, or something to hit that number. So we engineered our growth this way for literally years. And I think that was very, very impactful in what kept us growing for a long time. Every month, it actually felt like we were doing unscalable things. But the repeated application of not scalable things, led to very, very consistent growth.
And you probably generated some insights through that forced targeting that were working, and then you could deploy over and over again to continue that revenue growth.
Absolutely. And with time, it changed. A month was too little. We had to move to a quarter because maybe you can have a big event one month. And it evolved over time. But even now, that kind of very, very specific focus on growth, I think has helped us, kind of get to where we are today.
So it's really more of a mindset more than anything else. I need to achieve
this. And a quantitative approach where every single month we have a specific target. We multiply that out into, how many dollars in MRR we need to have. We subtract out our churn rate and we figure out exactly, even then when we missed our months, we would know exactly why. We'd be like, hey, we thought, these 5 workshops would bring in $10,000. They only did $4,000. Maybe next month we should model it out differently.
That's fantastic. We only have a couple of minutes left, so why don't we close with some advice? What can you guys tell the group if they're looking to sort of generate their first revenue, or they're looking to grow what they've currently got?
I can give 0 advice when it comes to a venture-backed business. So just throw that out of the way, that this guy is the one who's going to give you all the jewels. But if you're building just a bootstrap business, I think for us, we didn't come into it thinking, oh my God, we have the largest marketplace ever. We came into it saying something that we're doing feels different and special, and we really leaned into what made us super unique. And that's why we're now working with large cities, large corporations, large philanthropy, because we really leaned into our unique place in the market. And that's really the only thing you can do, because for everything you think is super duper special, there's a lot of people trying to be in that sandbox, and you'll immediately be compared to 10 other people. And if you can't truly say why you're different in the end, you really can't go anywhere. And I mean, that's really been everything for us.
Awesome. How about you, Ankur?
Don't build a product with the idea that you'll figure revenue out later. A lot of people do that. I think one of the things that, again, we got right but didn't realize it at the time is charging from day one. I mean, you kind of had that when you asked people, hey, will you come to the event? And they're all like, yes, but
free is terrible.
Yeah. Charge people up front. Initially, do unscalable things to get people to pay you. We did dumb things like building whatever people asked for, and that's fine for the first few people. But really being able to charge up front, and once you kind of get to a point of I don't know, $1,000, whatever your smallest number is, from that point set a growth goal every week, month, quarter, and work backwards from that, and make that be the only real thing that matters. If you use growth as the one thing that matters, everything else kind of figures itself out. If you want to grow 10% and your product isn't good enough, you'll fix your product in order to hit the growth rate. But really working backwards from the growth rate would be my advice to everyone here.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening to us, and thank you again to Frank and the Inflection team for having us. And,
Big up, Frank.
We look forward to the rest of the day.